welcome to Historical. My name is David, and the show is finally back, and it is pissed off. In case you're wondering, the show has been on hiatus for about 3 or 4 months now at this point. So it looked like it was the end for Historical, but I've decided to continue doing the show, and I'm just going to do it on my own, and mainly just try to be informative. You know, if comedic opportunities present themselves, certainly I'll take those, but mainly I'm just going to be going through dry historic material, boring people to tears, because that's honestly how you do history. If you're not bored to tears, then you're not doing history right. I'm just kidding. Of course, history is exhilarating, full of all sorts of horrible things. So, you know, if you like true crime and you like all the horrific things that happen in the modern day, get a load of what they did back in ancient times. Pretty horrific. And it was all accepted too. Everyone was just kind of like took that as, oh, well, that is just how things are. But anyway, I'm not going to get too bogged down in that. From now on, the show is going to follow a few different formats. So one is going to be solo episodes. I'm going to be solo on some episodes. This episode in particular is going to be an interview episode, which is another format I'm going to be exploring. Interview episodes are not going to necessarily have anything to do with history. If it goes that route, it goes that route. But honestly, I just want to talk to some people and get a sense of where people want to go on their creative journey. And also, too, just to shoot the shit with some cool people. The third type of episode I'm going to do is a group discussion, which is probably just going to be me and Otto most of the time. But we're just going to talk about the material, the solo material that I go through. So those episodes will be grouped together. I recently had the chance to interview Vito Gesualdi. He's a comedian / YouTuber who recently gained some notoriety from showing up to counter-protest the walkout at Netflix over the Dave Chappelle special. If you aren't aware of that, that's all right. We cover a few different topics and mainly just nerd out. We barely touch on history, so if you're looking for history, you might want to pick a different episode. But here it is, my interview with Vito. Vito, welcome.
Hi.
Great to have you.
That was a little aggressive.
Yeah, man.
Aggressive, hello.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Bringing the energy to the podcast, man. Really appreciate it. That's kind of what we need sometimes.
We do kind of need that. Sometimes you don't get that. It's a real shame.
Yeah, so you're putting people to sleep on the pod. You know, because people are driving. You need to keep them awake. Yeah, that's my thing.
Exactly.
So if anyone's listening and who's unfamiliar with Vito,
I killed all those people in the clock tower incident, and they let me out. I went up there with my trusty sniper rifle, and I just kept picking them off. And also, I'm a comedian, I guess.
Yeah. Vito's a comedian and also a YouTuber. You can find his content out there as well. Some good stuff.
The YouTube stuff is interesting. I kind of fell into YouTube. It's not a plan. Yeah, well, I tried. I mean, I always made videos, but I always wanted to make videos like for someone else. Like I tried to get jobs at like magazines and stuff. I worked for like a video game publisher for a while, and we made like weird trailers and promo videos. And then that all didn't work. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make my own videos to see what happens. And it kind of immediately worked. And I'm like, God damn it. I should have just done that from the beginning.
Yeah, that's kind of cool too, man. Because like, you know, I do think there is some merit to that, right? Like I've tried my hand at YouTube stuff. I don't think I have the touch for it necessarily as an editor.
Yeah.
I do music. Like that's my kind of my main thing. So I'm more of in the audio realm. So like the video editing, I leave to the professionals.
Yeah, I put a lot of years of practice into video editing, I guess, and I hate editing though. It's the worst part of the process. See, that's what I wanted though, is I wanted to be like a talking head where I just show up and I'm funny, I hit my mark, and someone else does all the work. But They don't do that. They don't hand those jobs out. So now you got to be funny, and then you got to go and you got to edit all the graphics and the video, and it's a nightmare.
Gotta do it all yourself. I mean, it's the entrepreneurial spirit of the internet, I guess. And, to that point, like there's a lot of people since like, think about it, since the internet kind of became widespread, a lot of creators have seen success on their own terms, right? Like because they just kind of put their stuff out there, people find it, people like it, people share it, and that's kind of it was very organic that way. But now we're
Yeah.
seeing like with the algorithms and sort of this favoritism, and it seems like the industry in a way is almost trying to like wrestle control that back, that gatekeeping. So that they can really kind of control what content's put out there. I mean, that's just kind of what I see. I don't know. What do you think?
Uh, I mean, today I saw an article which is like all these. I don't know how. It's always this weird racial component to everything, but whatever. Let's just talk about it. Where all these guys in Hollywood are like, "Hey, I'm one of the best script writers around. I've written award-winning scripts for movies and TV, and I can't get work because every time they put out a casting call, it's like, white guys need not apply, right?" So we're kind of reaching this thing in entertainment where it's like the entertainment being created. I'm not going to say all of it, but there's definitely some of it that is not necessarily being made by the best and the brightest. It's being made by the checkbox committee, where it's like, wow, we got a black guy and an Indian guy and a Chinese guy. This is going to be the best TV show you ever watched. Which is not really. It's not really how writing works. I first and foremost consider myself a writer above all things, and it kind of drives me nuts to see the quality of TV and movies dipping down. And that's kind of part of what made my channel popular, was talking about how bad these Star Wars movies have gotten and these DC Comics movies. So I think we're reaching a space where people are becoming dissatisfied with the mainstream because the mainstream is playing this weird political game and not really focusing on the content, and also policing the content. I mean, if you want someone who's funny, are you gonna go watch one of these network television shows where they got to bite their tongue? You can't make jokes that you would make on The Office, less than 10 years ago, and they have banned episodes of The Office for being too offensive or edited them down. I mean, it's no wonder that people are running for the hills, and I think hopefully this independent media, the dream is finally going to come true. We'll see. Maybe it's all an illusion. I don't know.
I did catch some of your videos. Like, I think that's what initially attracted me to your content were some of the Star Wars videos, like the Last Jedi one in particular.
Yeah.
Because like like you point out, like all of just like how it almost becomes comedic, how he just keeps subverting the expectations, and it's just like at a certain point you're like that's not good writing. It's like good
No.
writing. Yeah, like it is.
And they don't even end up subverting. Like, it's like, hey, I'm subverting your expectations. I'm like, oh, cool. So you're going to kill off the black guy? Like, that's going to be like surprising, because he's like, no. I'm like, well, what do you mean no? That would have actually been a subversion, because I'm like, oh, there's no way they're going to kill off a face character this early. And they're like, no, he's fine. I'm like, well, then you're not subverting shit. Fuck you. Stop fucking with me. Not that I'm saying I want, again, with the racial component, I'm not saying I go to a Star Wars movie hoping the black guy dies, but I did watch that scene going, oh my God. It always takes balls to kill off a face character early on in a show or a series. That's why people loved Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, but they kill off a lot of face characters. If you haven't seen it by now, it's your fault.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, Ryan Johnson tells me I got all the balls in the world. I'm going to subvert everything. And then at the end of it, you're like, well, you didn't really, what did you do exactly? Luke was sad. All the men learned a lesson about toxic masculinity. Okay. Like there's a time and a place for that. Sure. I don't want it in my darn Star Wars movie. It's not helpful.
Yeah, and I think it was, apparent like that that whole process, the sequels all would have been helped just simply by some direction from the outset, like some planning, some just like basic planning. It seems like there was no plan. Like they just kind of threw it from guy to guy, and they were just like, here, do your thing. And that's not how you build a good story, especially with like a trilogy. It's like that's not how you do it. There was just no reverence shown for like the source material at all. It was, and like I think that's to your point, like what you're saying with a lot of the writers now. It's like there's this whole the people that are writing, especially doing reboots and like recreations of existing stuff, like they don't seemingly have like a reverence or an understanding of the source material. So like Dune that just came out. It really seems like Denis Villeneuve loves Dune. Like he understands Dune.
Yeah.
And he was like,
he also clearly loved Blade Runner, which is why that movie worked. So it's like, why don't you find guys who like really like the franchise?
Yeah.
I don't think Ryan Johnson gives a shit about Star Wars. I really don't. I don't think that guy. You need to define it. That's the reason why. What's his name? That stupid guy with the cowboy hat. Ah, God.
Filoni.
Yeah,
Dave
that's why
Filoni.
Filoni. That's when I saw that fucking guy wearing that stupid hat. I went, "This is the only guy I want to write Star Wars." Why? Because he's a big dumb nerd who clearly doesn't care about looking like a normal human being. This man must fucking love Star Wars. My understanding of the world is that guys who dress like that probably care way more about Star Wars than I do, and I don't think I'm incorrect in that. So yeah, I want big dumb nerds. I don't want you to go find these sensitive artistic kids who, want to teach me a lesson about my internal toxic whatever the fuck. Like I don't want to hear it. I have no time for it. Don't do it. Leave me alone. I guess I'm from the I'm the privileged, not privileged, but as a film as a movie goer, I'm like, I'm here to not feel like I'm learning. I don't want to learn anything, you know?
Yeah.
I'm here to learn a lesson. And
Yeah.
I keep going to these movies and they keep being like, I'm gonna teach you a lesson about you. I'm like, I don't want it. Leave me alone. I don't want to
Yeah.
learn that my masculinity and the force and is, all toxic and I don't have time for it. Leave me alone. Just have lightsabers and bad. There's room for that. If I want like a dark, depressing art house film, I can go and find one. I don't need that in the Star Wars though. You know?
Or it's like if you're going to do that with Star Wars, like do it in like, kind of like a story or something separate. Like if you really want to kind of explore that, but don't do it like the main
Yeah, you can
thing.
do a side story. If you want to do a
right?
dark, weird side
Yeah,
story, I'd be like, oh, that's cool and interesting. But if Luke Skywalker's there, no, I don't want you to like catch me off guard. Oh,
yeah.
Luke Skywalker's, he's a transgender woman now, and he started a band. No, I don't want any of that. Okay, it sounds interesting, but you just not now. No.
It's almost like writers don't know how to do subtext. Like teach people a lesson without them realizing that they're getting the lesson. Like, you know what I mean? Have them being
Yeah.
enjoying what they're considering. It's like kind of like The Matrix, or like you look at any of these kind of like sort of classic sort of sci-fi things. It's like there is like this subtext to it. It's not necessarily about like the dystopian future. It's about like reawakening, or like, a rebirth, or like kind of the human experience. It's kind of there's that, that's good writing to me.
Subtext. Yeah.
It's like when you kind of comment on something. And what I love about Blade Runner in particular is like the ambiguity, and sort of like it doesn't need to explain everything. It's like there's so much that's left unsaid that you open to interpretation, especially, and just the whole meditation is just on like, well, if you are in almost every way like a human, designed to be exactly like a human, where's the line?
Yeah.
Are your emotions real? Are your dreams like valid as a humans? Like, it's like, it's an interesting thought. It's just, but that's the whole point. It's not to give you an
Well, you
answer.
also have to pick a thematic through line. Like Blade Runner, its thematic through line is, yes, what is the barrier between man and machine? At what point, or is life, truly life? Okay. And then Star Wars, like between each movie, it's like, okay, this is about the path of the hero and doing the right thing. Now it's about, well, doing the right thing doesn't really count. It doesn't result in anything. Oh, no, we're back on the original moral. It's like, no, man, you got to figure out what the thematic pull of your entire franchise is. And again, if you do side stories, you can play around with other things. But if this is the so-called Skywalker saga, and we're talking about the whole hero journey of the Skywalker family, and I don't need an install. You can have an installment where Luke's feeling real bad about himself, but don't have him like pathetic.
Yeah.
And also don't have him. I don't understand. I always have this idea in my head that if a character was a great hero and they won their battle against evil, you show the audience that there was some sort of lasting reward for that happening. Okay, so clearly we're all like, oh, this is great. Luke's gonna go and train the next generation of Jedi. His reward is that he is now a great Jedi and he gets to carry on the Jedi Order. But then they're like, no, he didn't get anything. He's rotting away in a hut. It was all for nothing. And I'm like, well, then the moral of your movie is now don't fight the dark side. It's a waste of your time. Like, that's a bad moral. You built up an entire franchise of like, fighting the dark side is the most important thing. Always do the right thing and fight for good. Well, what happens at the end? Oh, nothing. You fucking die on a rock. Well, then don't do it. Then that's a bad moral. Yeah. And that drives me up a wall. It's crazy to me.
No, that's exactly right, man. And in my mind,
the entire all of the sequels are misguided, like from the jump. Like I remember The Force Awakens came out, and a lot of my friends liked it. Like everyone was like, oh, like Star Wars is back, like it's not the prequels. And I saw the writing on the wall immediately. I was like, I didn't like it. I was like, it didn't feel right. I was like, Han Solo didn't get a reunion with Luke. Like what's going on here? Like I
Yeah.
feel like the first, at least episode 7, should have been focused on our old characters, passing that torch. And like in like it's a gradual process. Don't just like kind of like it's all kind of feels like a roller coaster. You're just like jumping from one scene to the next. I'm like, where's the build? Like, what's going on?
Right.
Like, and I have this issue. It's like kind of with the new Matrix. This is kind of the same issue I had with the Force Awakens. Was the entire movie, like you said, they've undone everything. Like the entire ending of the OT trilogy. So I was like, what? Why? How have you?
Yeah, it's so bizarre to me that you would spend 3 movies building up this martyr thing, this Jesus type storyline where he dies in the first movie, he comes back, and then I guess the rest of it is maybe the Book of Revelations or something where it brings a close and there's a great peace or whatever else. And you go, let's bring him back again. Neo has come back to life so many times at this point because he comes back to life in the first movie, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the second time he's come back. Stop doing it. I don't want him to come. Remember the first movie, he gets destroyed by the Agent Smith, and the big Jesus moment is him understanding, oh, I can overcome the Matrix, whatever. And like, oh, cool, he had his little Jesus moment. And now they're doing it again. They're like, look, Jesus is back to life. How many times can you bring Jesus back to life? This is stupid. You could have done it. You could have had him be a clone or an after image in the Matrix. But instead they're like, no, we just want Keanu Reeves because he's the only thing that's going to sell tickets. It feels too obvious to me the reason they're doing it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Is that the entire thing is just a narrative? Like, what's the narrative? We need to have him back. So it's like explaining why it's the whole movie is just an explanation for its existence. It's really bizarre. But the whole movie, especially Force Awakens and Matrix Resurrections, I was the entire time I'm like, what is going? Like, why are we here? And it bothers me with these reboots and stuff. It's like they purposely aren't answering questions. And like that one scene with like whatever the Maz Kanata or whatever the character is, that's just like a good question for another time. It's just like, dude, like you can't do that. Like you need to tell us what's going on for me to enjoy this.
Well, they didn't explain like what the issue was. They're just like, there's this new thing called the First Order, and I'm like, okay, are they like, how, where'd they come from? What are you talking about? And they basically just want you to be like, well, it's the Empire again. You're like, but you guys defeated the Empire. Are these guys like terrorists? Are there like not that many of them? Like, are they a big faction? Are they a little thing? We never understand. We never really understand what the stakes are in the new Star Wars universe. The sense of scale is like very confusing.
Yeah.
They never clarify who's in charge of what or why. Why is Leia still running around with why are there rebels? Why is there not like a giant Republic force taking care of this threat? And it's like, just accept it, just go along with it. Stop thinking. It's bizarre.
And like I read some like side material that was attempting to explain all that. They're like, well, like the resistance is like it's like a paramilitary force. It's like this is so convoluted. Like and to the movie, if you can't explain this simply in a narrative, it's not a good idea. Like you need to make it easy enough to like just tell through a visual medium. And honestly, I feel like they would have done well if they like built this up at like the Republic. Like we don't even know about the First Order. It's been something. It's like a secret thing, right?
Yeah,
like that's
been building and it
for 20 years,
out of nowhere.
And then they say like they assassinate particular people in the Senate or whatever. It's like you can have I think the main thing with that is they probably just wanted to avoid the space politics because of all the shit Lucas got, and I understand that. I get it. Like that's probably fair. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. It's just Lucas didn't do it necessarily right. It's like as long as you have the stuff in place properly and didn't like get too bogged down and all that, like you could have had some like political assassination or something that sets all of this stuff off, right?
I mean, they could have done some. The problem is that J.J. Abrams is a very bad writer. I don't know why he keeps getting away with it, where they go, hey, can you make a movie for us? And he goes, how about I make someone else's movie again? And we go, no, write a new movie. And he goes, what if I just make the same movie again, though? And then we just let him do it. So he was like, I'm just going to remake A New Hope, which, I mean, I guess that was the safest play, but it
was safe. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was safe in a way that I'm like, okay, so we're just going to watch the same trilogy again, except this time it's a girl. Like, I would have very much liked them to turn the Star Wars thing on its head and be like, okay, the first trilogy was about the rebels at their lowest point and the Empire, whatever else. And then why don't you show me, hey, diplomacy, we've tried to restore balance to the galaxy. We're trying to be statesmen and leaders and whatever else. And there's this new terrorist force, the First Order, that is gaining support and causing trouble and claiming, we had better things under Empire rule. There was always, never an empty belly under the Empire or whatever else. Like, yeah, that seems like to me the more natural way to take it than to just say, the Empire's back. Also, the Emperor's back. Yeah. Basically, nothing has changed. Like, okay, well, cool.
Yeah,
it's very bizarre to me.
Yeah, and to your point about like big dumb nerds, it's like Favreau, it's like Abrams is not like he may as try as he might. That's not what he is. Favreau, on the other hand, like you see the success he's having, and it's not like I'm not saying these are like phenomenal, but like they're head and shoulders way more competent than the sequels, like Mandalorian and Boba Fett. Like he's writing these, like he has a seemingly a taste for this balance of like, okay, yeah, we don't need to get too bogged down and stuff, and they do. It is a little too fan servicey for me, but like at the same time, I feel like fans have with the whole thing with Star Wars have been kind of, it's been so truculent that giving the fans something that they want isn't necessarily, it's not bad. Like the whole Luke Skywalker thing, I was like, okay,
at this point you got to give them something. They're like, all right, man, you've taken all you killed Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Leia. Okay, thank you so much. I have a hole in my heart. Can I have something cool? Can I have something that feels good?
Yeah.
This depressing. I know they were like, oh, we're going to end it with Leia and that'll be, no, it didn't work for a number of reasons. Sorry. And now everybody's just depressed and you got to figure out how to fix it. And they're starting to make some sort of inroads towards fixing this problem, but
Filoni.
Filoni. I trust a guy with a cowboy hat.
Yeah. Yeah, he seems like he cares, and like we were talking about, like he has reverence for the material, like he respects it in some way.
Yeah, like he respects it almost too much. Have you ever listened to him talk about the Phantom Menace, and you're like, listen, man, it's not that good.
yeah, really.
Did you ever hear that little spiel he gives about like how important the fight with Darth Maul is? He's like, see, right here is the pivotal, and I'm like, all right, man, well, yeah, it's interesting. It's not nearly as cool as you're making it sound.
Yeah, but see, that's kind of
but
part
good
of
for him. You need that guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like kind of part of it. And Rodriguez, I find, is like a nerd in a similar way. I don't know if you like. I watched like special features for like on like Once Upon a Time in Mexico, because I believe that was one of the first movies shot on digital, and so he did like a lot of the CGI and editing and all that shit himself, just at his like ranch or whatever. And it was just interesting watching him talk about his process. He's just like such a nerd about it that he's interesting on just talking about it. Even if I don't necessarily know everything that he's saying, like I'm like, well, this guy loves what he does. And he's such a nerd about it that, like there's some reverence for the craft. Whereas like some of these guys seems like they're just like managers, like on these projects. They just come in and be like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to check that box. We're going to, and they don't have a passion for it. Like, I don't get a sense of passion from J.J. Abrams, honestly. Like
J.J. Abrams seems like a businessman, I will say. J.J. Abrams has hit upon something that I like mysteries. He's figured that out. Yeah. Audiences do inherently like mysteries. The problem that you're going to find is very rarely, and I would say the majority of time, a mystery is more exciting than the answer to the mystery. And that's where J.J. Abrams gets into trouble, is he sets up all these mysteries and you go, well, the payoff can't possibly be as interesting as you're fucking making it out to be. Because the mystery ends up being, remember Emperor Palpatine's still alive. And you go, well, okay. It was intriguing at first, and you're like, oh, who's Snoke? What's the First Order? What's all that? what is a Force Awakening? You know, I still don't know what the fuck a Force Awakening is. That pisses me off more than anything. What do you mean the Force Awakened? Just tell me what that means.
Yeah.
Have one character go, well, an awakening in the Force is when nobody knows. They don't know. It's a title that means nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's figured out that mysteries are interesting, but he has not yet come to terms with the undeniable fact that you can't create that many mysteries and have them all be interesting. So you really got to sit back and go, okay, I could pack this thing with 1,000 mysteries, or I could figure out maybe one or two that are kind of cool and have an actual payoff, and I'm not just going to figure it out as I go along. And he has never seemingly gotten to that point because we have not punished him. I think you know what? Maybe Rise of Skywalker is the final punishment for JJ. Maybe this whole Star Wars thing is his punishment, but how is it even a punishment? Because he probably walked away with millions of dollars. So he has not been punished.
Yeah.
And if you don't punish the dog, he just does it again. So we're going to get more of this shit. It's going to keep happening.
Yeah, you're exactly right, man. You know, like
tragic.
It's incentive, you know, it's like, yeah. And that's my what I've railed against tons of time, you know, over the years is just like Hollywood. It's like we pay when we show up for shitty movies, like the whole Transformers era. That's what I was bitching about. I was just like, man, like these are just like, these could be so much more than what they are if we just didn't patronize them like that, like, because like they just ended up being like these CGI messes, and they're certainly fun. Like, I don't have anything against fun, don't get me wrong, but like at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I do love a good narrative. I love when a writer outsmarts me. Like, that's my thing. It's like when I'm watching something and I'm like, oh shit, I did not see that. I did not even consider that possibility. I feel that's a great feeling. I love that, because when I can predict what's going to happen in the story, I'm like, all right, it's not interesting to me. I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be one of these three things, and if it ends up being that, then I'm just like, all right. But, you know, that's not necessarily bad sometimes if, like, you know, it's working in service of something greater. But honestly, that's my whole kind of my gauge for good writing is just like, is it predictable? You know, is there something unique about it, or did they have something they actually want to say? You know, and that's that's basically my gauge for it.
Yeah, I very much, my favorite stories are ones that, you know, make you think and don't give you all the answers. I like stories where there's a lot going on in the background, but it's not necessarily the thrust of the story. See, I think a lot of these stories think that the mystery is the important part, which it can be, but a lot of the times it's just great to have a very good, strong character story set against a bit of mystery, but you know, there's answers out there. It's complicated to define, but Star Wars had neither, though. Like, nobody was I would almost forgive all the, like, I have no idea what's going on in this Star Wars universe if there was like a really core story about Rey Skywalker, which we now have to call her Rey Skywalker, and discovering herself or whatever else. But no, it was like a chintzy, stupid, like, kids story. She was like a bubbly little schoolgirl. Oh, gee golly, I can't wait to figure out all my force powers. And I was like, all right, well, there's nothing. If that's not going to be here, then the focus has to be on the mystery and the plot and that, you know, unfolding. But that didn't have any payoff either. So the whole thing was just a complete mess.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, you know, it just kind of reeked of that. It's cash grab. Let's you know, switch gears a little bit. You know, the most recent thing I think you probably have been getting a lot of attention for was the Netflix protest where you showed up, and you know, obviously everyone's shouting at you. Like, just, you know, obviously I saw some of the videos, but like, you know, what was that like? You know, have not been in a situation like that before. Like, what is that? What is that like?
With everyone yelling at you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, man. I think I just become a different person when I go to these events. It's like, well, you're kind of playing a character, right?
Okay.
So you kind of just get into the headspace of, listen, Vito's not really here right now. This is some insane person who says crazy things and gets in trouble. So yeah, I go in and I mean, you just got to try and make it clear you're not there to hurt anybody. We went to the Netflix protest because they hate Dave Chappelle, and we were like, hey, you know, we're here to say, you know, how you doing? How's everybody? Everybody got very mad that we were there, but you have to just kind of know that you're not there to hurt anybody. You're just there to have yourself heard, and you're equally obnoxious to anyone else there. That's the thing. Everyone goes, how could you interrupt their protests? And I go, which protest? Oh, you mean the like really obnoxious, stupid one about how Dave Chappelle sucks? Like, yeah. And I'm like, well, how could they interrupt my protest saying that I love Dave Chappelle? What do you mean? I have just as much right to be there as them.
Yeah.
And that's what people seem to forget, which is sad.
Yeah, it's just like those anymore. Like you see these environments, like these sort of like viral, I guess if you can call it that, like environment where like like videos are going out and things are there's a lot of tensions, and obviously this was certainly more innocuous than some of the other shit we've seen, like with like Rittenhouse or some shit like that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get involved in it. Everybody asks because I've done like other protest covers. They're like, you should go harass a Black Lives Matter protest. I'm like, what are you, fucking stupid? No.
Yeah.
I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Netflix in Dave Chappelle, sure, I'm there.
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff, no thank you.
Because
thank you.
Because I mean, that was a legitimately, honestly, it's like, come on, Dave Chappelle, he's a comedian, and I don't subscribe to the notion.
They're protesting comedy. It's absurd. There's nothing more absurd than that.
Yeah, and I don't subscribe to the notion of like content influencing violence. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's the whole thing with video games. Video games got that same treatment, and so like it's the same thing to me. Honestly, it's like it's this sort of like using this sort of moral.
It's sneaky. It's sneaky what they try to claim. I mean, not to get too deep on the transgender, issues of the day, but their very big, loud message is, we are dying. You're killing us with these jokes. It's the same as putting a knife to our throat. And you go, okay, guys, we're going to calm it down a little bit. We got to be a little bit honest here. That's not what's happening, and you know it. And it's bizarre that you're claiming otherwise. No one is trying to, what do you call it, murder the trans community with jokes. It's not, no comedian is anyway.
Yeah, no. And like, there's certainly hateful people out there, but comedians are trying to make people laugh. It's like, That's the point. It's like, and they may go places sometimes that are, the whole thing with comedy,
offensive and whatever,
but they usually pull back. There's an awareness to comedy. They know a good comedian knows where their sort of lines are, and they play with that line, and that's sort of the point. That's why like guys like Louis C.K. will drop like the M-bomb in his act because he knows where that line is, and he knows what he's saying. He knows what his joke is. It's like he's not using it in a derogatory way. He's actually making fun of people who like avoid the word,
right.
And it adds a little bit of like commentary on like the way people. He's like, it's like, why don't you take ownership for the shitty words you want to say, like. And so that's one of my. I love CK. He's up there. He's obviously gone through some scandal.
He's coming back.
He's
coming back. I hope. That's again, this era that we're living in. I don't know. Well, I know exactly what happened, or at least I have my theory, is that these people started showing up with these very particular ideas about what's acceptable and what's okay to say. And for some reason, we allowed these people into these organizations, these media organizations. So that's one thing we saw with this protest at Netflix. Is they said, listen, we're not trying to ban Dave Chappelle, but we do think it would be fair if, you put a couple, let's say 1 or 2 or 5 or 12 transgender people on the board, and then we can just monitor the content and make sure it doesn't cause harm to the transgender community. And I go, I know what you're doing. I see what you're doing, is that these people get in these organizations. Nobody wants to fire them because it's politically inconvenient. They showed up promising, well, I'm just going to make sure that we raise diversity and inclusion within our ranks, which all sounds well and good. But the next thing you know, you're shackled to these crazy people who want nothing more than to stifle free thought and your ability to have fun. And it's I don't know how people keep falling for it. And we see every once in a while, I'll see a article about them finally clamping down and firing one of these nut jobs, being like, sorry, we don't want you here because you're just making everybody pissed off. But it seems to be that these people have found positions of power where they are able to stifle creativity and free thought and comedy. And that's why the only place you can really find it is independently. And you can't even find it independently because these people are on the boards at YouTube, at Google, at Facebook, and they're also hunting you there. And that's the scariest thing of all, is when they work their way into these tech companies and start asserting their influence there. So that's why it's a very scary time for comedy, is we're fighting with a bunch of people who think they know better than the rest of the world, that the best way to save the world. I mean, if you watch, there was that guy at the Netflix protest who stole my sign and beat up my friend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you watch, there was an interview with him at the protest where he basically admits, he says, well, Chappelle didn't say anything wrong. The problem is that Americans are so stupid that they might hear what he says and not understand it, because Americans are so stupid. And then they'll be racist or bigoted because they don't understand his joke. And I'm like, okay, hold on. So the theory that we're working with is Dave Chappelle has done nothing wrong, but everybody else is so stupid that we have to silence him anyway. Like, what is happening? What are we talking about? We're living in a crazy world right now. If a guy could just come out and say that and think that he's the most rational guy in the world, saying it out loud.
Yeah, and it's just a very authoritarian mindset where it's just like, well, no, like somebody has to be like, it's this weird. Yeah, somebody has to be like a parent or like a teacher and like tell us what's right. And it's like, no, it's like it's a realm of free debate is a merit. It should be governed by meritocracy.
Meritocracy, yeah. It's crazy that they tell us this meritocracy is a racist idea. They're like, no, that doesn't exist. I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course. What? They go, well, no, that's just a word we use to hire white people. I'm like, no, it's you. If you show me two plumbers, okay, and I tell them to fix a pipe, whichever one fixes it faster is the better plumber. Okay, like a meritocracy can exist.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, you didn't hire that plumber because he's a black guy. I go, well, listen, I'll hire the black guy. He's got to be faster. It's a very simple, like, what do you want? And now obviously it gets complicated when we get into the creative sphere. How do you tell who's truly a better writer? But the idea that, I don't know, I really don't think the system only wants to hire white people, and that's what they tell us. They tell us if we don't step in, then people will only hire white people because we're all secretly racist. And I don't know. I reject that hypothesis. There's some of that, sure, but I don't think it's nearly as widespread as we claim. I love working alongside people of color. They're great. They have great stories and food. Now I'm being racist. You know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah,
no, it's
for
crazy.
sure. Yeah, man. Crazy. And it shouldn't, the quality of your work should not matter what you are, like if your work's good, if what you put out, what you write is good, it shouldn't matter who you are. And so like some people, I think we've seen this, like it's been happening for years now, where people basically will just hide behind whatever they can when they get even legitimate criticism, and they'll just hide behind, oh, well, you just don't like it because I'm this or that. And it's like, no, like there can be legitimately bad or things wrong with your process or whatever you're putting out there. Or it's just like mediocre quality. If it's, if it's derivative or if it's like just not interesting, I should be able to judge that because that's what, when you have a taste for something, that's what you naturally do. You will start to judge it based on what you know.
Right.
And so that's how I am with comedy. It's like comedy is very merit based. It's like you have to be fun. You have to make people laugh. Like you can't be successful in comedy and
well, that's what I'm always confident about is that no matter what happens, I've always found nobody at this point can tell me I'm not funny because trust me, people try. And I go, I can't believe you. Because the reason I can't believe you is that I'm getting millions of views on these videos and people are telling me they're laughing their ass off. I did that stupid thing at the Chappelle protest. Everybody told me it was the funniest thing. So I think people, you can recognize who's funny or not. And I think that we have this system that seems to think that it can just decide, well, that guy's not funny. We're going to say he's not funny because he's offensive. Here's the problem. Everyone knows that Louis C.K. is funny. Of course he is. How could he not be? He's one of the funniest guys out there. So when they come to us and they try to tell us he's not funny, we go, I categorically reject your hypothesis, sir. Yeah. I have to. I know what is funny. You could say it's not your taste, but your taste is bad and it is not in line with the rest of the nation in which you live. And that's why I'm excited about maybe the future of this. This is the first time that we've had the media try to tell us what is entertainment. I mean, maybe not the first time, but it's the first time that it's been so overwhelming where the taste of the distributors and the networks is so out of line with what I think people actually want. People are saying, we want Louis C.K. to have a special. We want Dave Chappelle to have a special. We're not watching most of these TV sitcoms. There hasn't been, what has been the last big TV sitcom hit? People, The Office, I keep bringing it up, but like it's a phenomenon on streaming and everyone's fighting over the rights because new generations are discovering it and they're going, this is 10 times funnier than all the TV shows I've ever been shown as a child. What is happening?
Yeah.
How is it possible that something this funny exists and we're not allowed to make it anymore because Michael Scott makes little Asian impressions at like one point? Like, what is happening? We know what's funny and they keep trying to convince us otherwise. And some people have fallen for it. Some people go, you're right, it's not funny. You're right, it's offensive.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for those people.
Well, yeah, it's like an infantilization. I hate that word because some people just throw it around, but like it really is sort of treating people. It's like, well, we don't know who can handle this. It's like, that's not how this works. You know what I mean? When creativity, it's like, you don't get to judge that. Like when people have something to say creatively, that's why the whole point of like, in my part of my fascination with history is just like the study of just like, how artists are treated throughout history, how creative people are treated throughout history they've always been getting like the worst end of the stick because they're usually the ones speaking out against power. They're usually the ones that actually have something interesting to say that might threaten, the existing power structures, leaders, whatever. And so it's like the way artists are getting treated in a society is a good barometer or like the way creativity in general is just treated in society is good barometer for how things are going. So like you see it here, people are getting very authoritarian about shit. Yeah, I feel like things are kind of moving in a direction where it's like we're going to have to make a decision at some point because there's a whole subset of people that seemingly want to govern and control what people are saying, which is just like it's a non-starter. Like that's not enough for a free society. You can't square that.
I keep saying this, and I have to coach it in terms to say I am not here to beg for money and you don't have to give me $1. But the most powerful thing in the world is clearly the power of the dollar. And for the longest time, we've accepted that, we don't have any power and it's all the networks and they determine what goes on TV. No, you have the power in your pocket right now.
Yeah.
Like 100%. And if there's going to be a media revolution, it will be funded by the people. So like right now I can go on Patreon and I can look and there's a number of podcasters, artists, musicians that I follow. And you know what I do? Because I believe in creating the glorious future of independent media, I give them $1 or $2 a month. I don't know how to put this into terms. I think that is the most incredible thing you can do right now. There is so much power in just giving up $1 because every one of these guys who goes, that's what's happened to me is for the longest time, I tried to work within the system and make my own shit and it didn't work. And I ran out of money. I was living in a fucking roach infested apartment, paying $500 a month, waiting to die. And then I started making YouTube videos and I managed to amass an audience, which now thankfully helps fund what I do. And I can make comedy full time. Okay, me going to the Chappelle protest happened because I can take a day off to be an idiot because I don't have to go to like a normal day job and, slave away on some stupid shit. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to is like really, I know nobody likes spending money, but you have to divorce in your head. There's two different ways to spend money. If you're spending money on a product made by the system, yeah, you can feel like it's predatory in a way. You're being taken advantage of by some sort of intricate capitalist game, whatever. Fine. Nike's ripping you off. But if you are giving money to a creator in return for a service, that shouldn't feel like, oh, I lost out on money. You should feel fantastic about that. I went to a comic convention a month ago. I went to like a dozen booths. And I just bought their comic. I didn't care what it was. I was like, how much is it? $5? Give me a copy. Most of them are fucking terrible. The worst comic books I've ever read in my life. But I don't care because who knows? Maybe one of these guys is going to be the next big fucking thing. And he's going to keep creating or he's going to help other people create. Just the idea that something exists outside of the system is noble enough in itself that I'm like, here is my $5 for your shitty comic book. Please don't stop doing this. because the more people who feel enabled to do it, that's the only way we're going to have change. And these tastemakers who work their way into these corporations and force their will upon the people. They don't have power in these spheres, and we can take it away from them by just funding it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I know that's a crazy, lofty thing to try and get at, but that is really what I am so excited about. I think Patreon is the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm so excited by Patreon and all these other independent funding alternatives. This is the first time that it has been easy and simple to organize, Kickstarter, crowdfunding, all of it.
Yeah.
Like this is a legitimate revolution, and I think the media is very scared that we're able to do this.
Oh yeah, I think you're right, man. And like like what you're saying there, it's like voting with your wallet really is like that's what I've always just kind of preached. It's like, people, talk about all of the issues, with like capitalism and systems and government and all the corruption. It's just like a lot of it could be solved just by, knowing who and where we should spend our money. So it's like, even you can expand this out wider to, if we want to talk about like corporate America and stuff, it's like if a corporation is like doing something shitty to their workers, then, if we actually could, vote with our wallets, we could influence companies to treat people better, give people better wages. If we actually demonstrated that power in a legitimate way. But anymore, it's just like all the protests and all the consumer boycotts are also politicized. It's like, they kicked out the Trump support out of the Cheesecake Factory. And so everyone's like, oh, go to the Cheesecake Factory. And then, some, Goya CEOs in the White House and all the people on the left are like, don't buy Goya. It's like, but it's like, what if we all kind of just thought about the workers and the people's wages and shit and tried to, because I'm not like, I'm not like fucking communist or anything. Like, I'm not going to be like, we need to dismantle the entire, it's like, that's not going to happen. That's fucking pie in the sky shit. Like, but we can.
Also, if you're worried about any company, like the company that voted for Trump is much less worrisome than a company that, pays Chinese people to fling themselves off a building. Like, there's certain ethical consumption under capitalism. Sure. But yeah, a lot of the things people get worried about is like the CEO said something stupid. And I'm like, I don't care. It's not nearly as egregious as what he could have been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way people are treated, man. It's like, I don't know. It's like there's like so much distraction, like, away from just kind of like sort of just like core humanity and like, create, that focus on creativity and like, what people, expression, like, and anyway, I wanted to ask you, like, obviously you like Chappelle, you're a fan of Dave. Like, is there any other like comedians, like big or small, like alive or dead, that you're like a big fan of too, or?
Honestly, I'm trying to think. I mean, I like Dave. I like Bill Burr. I loved Norm Macdonald so much.
Oh yeah, Norm.
Like Norm was my absolute number one.
Yeah.
And losing out on him, yeah. It's when he went, I'm like, well, comedy is truly dead today. As sad as that is.
Yeah.
I'd like to be one of these guys who says, hey, I know all these cool young up and coming comedians or whatever, but honestly, I've been less focused on the realm of like stand up and stuff, and more like I look at like a lot of online creators and what they're doing.
Okay.
I don't know, but the stuff I like is very weird. I love, do you ever watch Red Letter Media? Not that they're comedians necessarily.
Oh, I mean, I consider comedic though. Yeah.
They're very funny. Yeah. I find, very funny. And they're love
clever too. Like, it's very subtle. There's a lot of subtle stuff they do. That's like, I don't know. I have an appreciation for that. Like, they put a lot more than they necessarily need to into what they do.
I appreciate that they put effort into it. I mean, they're kind of living the dream I want to live. Is they got a little warehouse and they just hang out and make videos. I'm like, God, if I could do that, that would be awesome.
Hell yeah.
Someday, hopefully. But yeah, I did not come prepared with my cheat sheet of who you should be following or not. Unfortunately.
You heard about Shane Gillis? You know who that is?
Yeah.
Like,
he got robbed.
Yeah, with the whole SNL thing. And like, it's funny though. It's like, cause like all this creative stuff he's been doing, like since that happened, like the Gillian Keefe stuff.
Yeah. And he's been knocking it out of the park. Ryan Long is a guy who's knocking it out of the park.
Yeah. Ryan Long too, man.
I'm infinitely jealous of that man's stamina. And I don't know how these guys fucking do it. They're making like a video a week and it's like a good, I gotta figure something out. I'm a lazy individual. I've been working on some secret projects. I'm doing
Oh, hell yeah.
some narrative projects. I have a comic book I need to finish storyboarding. I found a great artist. I'm very excited about that. I actually want to do a bunch of, you know what? Like, the more I look at it, it's very weird. Comedy, for some reason, the only place that's allowed to get away with anything is animation for some reason. If a cartoon says it, it's like, okay. Like South Park can do shit that is not allowed. Even like Rick and Morty can do shit that they don't let you do anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shit, I want to be doing cartoons and comic books and whatever. If I can say fucking horrible things in the form of a cartoon, then yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And that's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping
Yeah, dude.
happens here.
Like it would be refreshing to see like like a adult animation that isn't sort of all like based on like that sort of Rick, like that's what everyone complains about. I see on Twitter. It's like basically all adult animation now is like Rick and Morty basically, or Big Mouth.
Yeah.
And it's like it would be cool to see something a little more, maybe just like with more just like more detail. Like I don't know, like people just need to step outside of that realm.
Yeah, I mean, animation's expensive is part of the problem, but I have
yeah.
I mean, I run into the problem though is that, I'm in LA and I'm trying to pitch stuff and I don't know who's seen what of my work and whether they go, oh, we can't associate with that guy. That's the guy who went to the Chappelle protest, whatever else. I might have to start working under an assumed name. We'll see. But I've made a few allies in this space. I actually know a guy. He's a great guy and he's a legit TV producer. And that's another comic book project. We're going to do a comic book and try to pitch it as a movie series. We'll see.
Oh, nice.
I love writing, man. That's always been my thing. I hate editing video. I need to hire some editors to just do it for me because I just fucking hate it. Drives me up. It's so much work, man.
Yeah, dude. No, for sure. Like we're doing this podcast and stuff like, and like, I mean, this is like, I kind of, I get a decent amount of listeners, but like, for what, independent guy, but like, the amount of time though that I ended up like editing some of these videos, like multiple cameras and like, I was spending, it was a little much.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and sometimes you'll spend all this time editing a video and then nothing happens. And you're like, I just wasted so much of my life.
Yeah.
I made the one video about Rise of Skywalker and it's like an hour long. I spent like 3 months on it. And when it first came out, it was getting like no views. And I'm like, I'm going to quit YouTube. I'm done. If I had spent 3 months of my life, like it was the most in-depth movie review of that stupid movie. Thankfully, it did eventually trend and it got 2 million views, which thank God.
Nice.
But for a hot second, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I mean, that's the other problem of being an independent creator is a lot of guys think, oh, well, you guys are just rolling in that ad money and you're fine. Dude, it is so inconsistent. I'll have 1 month where I'm like, I got it all figured out. It's the top of the world. Every video is hitting. I could just make money from here on out. And the next month, it's like, you're never getting any views ever again for the rest of your life. You're dog shit. I have a buddy. He was on top of the world. He was making stupid videos about, Britney Spears was trying to get out of prison or whatever. Britney Spears, not prison, but she had a conservatorship.
Yeah.
They started making a couple of videos about that. And he was getting insane views, 100,000 views a video. And he's like, I finally cracked the code. I finally know what I'm doing. I have enough to support my family. Today he sends me a message. He goes, it's all over. I thought I had figured it out. And now all the Britney Spears people are leaving me and they don't care about anything else I post. And I go and I'm like, well, that's why you got to do again. Like I have my own personal Patreon. I have a Patreon for the podcast I do with Dick Masterson, biggestproblem.show. And really the audience is the lifeline because the ad revenue and everything else. I think YouTube's playing a little game. They're like, what's the least amount we can pay these guys? And they still keep working for us. They have an algorithm to figure it out, and they're very sneaky. So again, God bless the audience. Without them, I would not be creating anything. I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, man. And that's like, that's for me, like that's basically the dream is like, organically build an audience, that like maybe someday I can, do that independent creator thing. It would be nice.
Yeah.
And, like the podcast stuff, I also do music. I sometimes I feel like I spread myself too thin. You got to do a million
different things. That's the problem is like the number of income sources I have to have just to, I would think like people know who I am. I've been in national news. I have a podcast that's listened to by you'd think I'd be like on top of the world. And every week it's like, I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm going to kill myself. Like, this is never going to work. I mean, I still have even a day job, which I have put off. It's not really a day job. It's like a, hey, if you want to do work, it's here available for you. But even with that, it's just a constant uphill struggle. It's never easy. Some guys make it look easy, but
Oh
it's
yeah.
usually not easy.
Yeah, man, and like that's you gotta be passionate about it on some level, right? Like it's like I can tell, like it's like there's you care about what you're doing, and like and there's passion because like there's tons of people out there that be like, you know, I put in some effort into this, and I definitely could put in more, and I probably would be more successful if I did. But at the end of the day, though, I'll talk to people that don't do anything, and they're just, oh man, I would love to do a podcast, or I'd love to do this, or love to do that, and I'm just like, you can like you can
Yeah.
definitely do it. It takes time and it takes effort though. Like
What I don't think they tell people is it's a sacrifice. If you want to be successful in this way, you have to say, you know what? My social life's going to suffer. My dating life's going to suffer. I mean, I haven't been on a date in 2 years. I blame it partially on COVID. And I'm talking to a very nice lady online, but you go, listen, if I want to get to where I'm going, you got to sacrifice a lot. Now, I'm a guy who, if I couldn't create stories and make people laugh, I'd put a gun to my head. So this, I get out of it what I want. But if you want, the family life and the, circle of friends, and you want the fame on top of it, well, you can't have it all. So you got to really come to terms with, what do you want out of this life? I get great enjoyment out of what I do. So I'm very happy with it, but it is not for everybody. And some people, I think, lose their sanity when they realize that you can't have it all. There's not enough hours in the day.
exactly. So like this is one thing like I wanted to bring up, like obviously with comedy, like you always talk about like clapter and like people that like a lot of these newer comedians, maybe less successful, that are coming out, they just kind of are preaching right to an audience
Yes.
versus like
Yes.
actually making jokes. And I actually want to. I have some stuff written. Like, I haven't actually gone out to do trying to stand up, but I need to go out and do it. Right, like just doing an
Yeah.
open mic, and try it out, see how it is. But that's kind of one of the things I'm like sort of like is making me a little hesitant.
It really depends on what the scene is.
Yeah,
Based on what I saw, I was doing stand up a little bit here and there. But I just kept going to open mic nights and just hearing just the worst comedy I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't sit here waiting for my fucking turn. Cause you gotta wait and sit
yeah,
through all these shitty acts. And I'm like, every comedian right now just sucks. And whatever guys are good, I don't know. And to be fair, I probably don't have, it's not like I've gone to every club and heard everything that's going on. And I'm sure there's guys who are doing great stuff. But there is a lot of this constant policing of the community and figuring out who's a criminal and who needs to be banned from the show or whatever else. And like I'm in some like Facebook groups for comedians, and I swear half the posts are not like, hey, there's a great show. Half the posts are, Jimmy Michaels is no longer allowed to do stand up at any clubs in the area because his girlfriend says he's a bigot. So make sure to put him on the blacklist. I'm like, this is not a productive community.
nah,
This is just like a name and shame group. So I don't know what's going on. I've wanted to get back into stand up too. I have a bunch of like new jokes that I think are great. And hopefully I find a spot for them. But yeah, it's weird right now.
yeah. And like I don't know if you're familiar with Tony Hinchcliffe. I think he's like what,
Yeah.
LA comedian. He does that podcast Kill Tony. It's like they have like kind of like it's kind of like an open mic sort of thing where they'll have guys come on and people will do a minute and they'll roast them and shit.
Yeah, I've been to one of those actually.
Oh, okay. Like
Yeah, a while back.
like it was like maybe a few months back, maybe it was earlier, I can't remember exactly when. I think maybe April last year. um he had an opener for him who was Chinese. I think his name's Peng Dang. And he, like, Tony would do this like kind of sort of like racist Chinese tirade like after Peng Dang would leave the stage. I guess it's like kind of as like a joke, like being the joke being that he's being so forcefully racist that it's like,
Right.
you know, it's like no sane person would, you know.
Yeah, would
So
accept this.
yeah, and so like, you know, it's obviously over the top and like ridiculous. And I watched the whole set too. I went to, but like this ended up getting posted online, and Pang Dang actually posted it online, trying to like basically during that like anti-Asian hate month
Trying
or
to
whatever.
shame him.
Yeah, being like, this is what Tony Hinchcliffe had to say during anti-Asian hate month or whatever.
What a
And
bitch move, man. I'm
and-
so sick. Like, we
Like,
need
you're-
to have a rule where if you're a bitch, like, we don't associate with you. There's so
Yeah.
many bitches, man.
well, I mean, he got like he definitely dropped Pang Dang as his opener after that, but like it was interesting because I've seen like these younger comedians, these like kind of up and comers, like kind of doing this, like almost like trying to like get clout or whatever, like from undercutting a popular, well-known
Established
comedian.
comedians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, and I kind of saw like this one, there's one online I follow on Twitter, Jessica Kirsten. She is New York based comedian. And like, she seemingly like ostensibly from what I can tell is like, you know, if anything, moderate left leaning, you know, not like in any way would be considered racist.
Yeah.
And like somebody was like saying that like her act was like accusing her of like, because she did like impersonations of like a Latina person. Like it was like, it's like, come on, man. Like, and people like were jumping like, we're like, really? Like her? Like, come on. Like, you can't. This isn't working. Like, no one's gonna buy this. And so, like, luckily,
Right.
these tactics haven't been working. But like, it was kind of to your point about like this community not being productive. You know what I mean? It's just like
It's the same problem I brought up of the people who work their way into the organization. So you'll have somebody who's
Yeah.
either working at that comedy club or booking comedians for that comedy club. And they're not there to find the best comedian. They're there to help patrol this weird community standard that they've decided upon. And those are the most dangerous people in the world. The booker who is a raging social justice psychopath. And that's what terrifies me more than anything.
So I've been seeing this, you know, pattern, and I'm like, luckily, it's not working so far.
Yeah.
Like it seems like people are basically rejecting a lot of these people that are trying to do this.
Comedy is a pretty bad place to try and force any of this. We're kind of like the front line or whatever of nope, can't
Yeah.
censor me, leave me alone. Like that's kind of our whole thing.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, I feel like comedians of like kind of the creatives out there are some of the more real people, and that's why I enjoy your takes on all that stuff, man. Is because like at the end of the day, it's like I'm not gonna see eye to eye with you on every single thing, but like
Yeah.
you're a real person. You have your own thoughts about stuff, and like that is value to that. Like I find value in that. Like when there's people that are just like kind of basically just pundits for like, you know, in this culture war, like, you know, it's like, and they always take a predictable side. I'm like, I don't need to know you. Like, I don't need to, I know what you think before you even say it. You know, I know what
Yeah.
position you're going to take because you're predictable, but you're not. And like, that's what's interesting about you to me. It's like,
I am
like-
very unpredictable. I have the problem where a lot of people expect, you know, somebody to be right wing, left wing. And I'm like, I reject directions. I don't believe in them. I don't think it makes
Yeah.
any sense. I think some people, yeah, the whole directions game. I don't like it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, believing like immigration or whatever, like is, oh, well, that's a right wing issue. And I go, no. It doesn't matter. Like, cause I don't know. It's hard to define. Like, well, you know, if you're a Republican, you have to think this way. You have to want to build a wall and you have to want to kick all the Mexicans out. And if you're, you know, a left-wing guy, you're supposed to want to hug every Mexican, give them a free college scholarship or whatever else. And I go, I think we can disagree as people, and it's not one way or the other. I think some Republicans can want to hug a Mexican and some Democrats can want to kick him in the shins. Like, when did we decide that everybody's got to agree on something? When did it become like this left versus right thing? And that's why I get in trouble, though, is because I do a thing which is perceived as conservative. Like when I went to the Netflix protest, people go, yeah, way to go, man. Do one for Daddy Trump. And I'm like, okay, whatever fuck that means. And then, and then I say something kind of lefty or whatever they consider lefty. And they go, I thought you were one of us, man. What the fuck? Why are you telling me to get a vaccine? And I'm like, dude, we're not going to agree on everything. Just like accept that.
Yeah.
What is this? Yeah. And that drives me nuts.
Right. It's like, and that's what, like, that's about, unfortunately, it's like the state of things is like when the audience audiences are expecting the predictable, or they crave the
Yeah.
predictable. That's like a problem. It's like, no, it's like, no, we should be craving like new, interesting, like what we like haven't experienced before. Like that's what we should be seeking out. I don't know. But like, yeah, man.
People are always seeking a community.
Yeah. Or a boogeyman
And
too, you know, and
yeah,
it's easy in the binary, right? Like if you have a binary, it's easy to just be like, oh, well, I'm this, you're that. And it's
yeah.
just like, to me, it's you miss out on so much interesting stuff in the world if you when you just lack that nuance. You know, it's like it's just left and right. It's like, well, you know, it's like,
Well, life
what
was a
else?
lot easier when we were all. See, we crave tribes.
Yeah.
Sadly, we have never
Yeah.
been able to unite as one human tribe. We need another. We need someone to hate.
Yeah.
And it used to be a lot easier when we had religions. You go, man, those fucking Catholics, fuck those guys. And the Catholics would go, those Christians, scum of the earth. And the Jews would go, nobody likes us. I don't know why nobody likes us. What did we do wrong?
Yeah.
But we've lost that, and our new religion is this left versus right dichotomy, which again I categorically reject as false. I don't believe in it. I think
Yeah.
it's a myth and an illusion, and I think people need to stop clinging to it. So you should have people on both sides that you agree and disagree with. Whatever your president says, you should, even if you voted for the guy, you should disagree with him on probably half the shit he says.
Yeah.
All right? He's not an infallible individual.
Yeah, exactly. And
That's what drives me nuts with any either Biden or Trump. As I'd go, well, you gonna defend him when he says this? You know, the crazy shit that comes out of his mouth. They go, yeah, well, that's my president. I go, I know you're fucking lying. I know you think you have to say that. Some of that shit these people say is just nuts. And Biden, I voted for Biden. He said some shit that just pissed me the fuck off, and I could admit to that.
Yeah.
And people try to own you. They go, oh, see, you must regret voting for him. And I go, no, because I agree with him on the shit that matters. He can still piss me the fuck off. It's weird the way that people think about politics.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, anymore, it's like, yeah, it's like so much of it's like all the social pressures. It's like, it's really wild. Like, you know, because when I was growing up, you know, like the 90s, basically, you know, Clinton's president, like it just, you know, maybe I was just too young to be aware of it. It just didn't feel like the environment was like this. Like the political environment was just so at each other's throats and just like so zoomed in. Like it's like we can't zoom out and look at the bigger picture of things. We have to keep such a narrow focus on a lot of these issues. And yeah,
again, I really connect it to a loss of tribal identity. Is you used to have a lot of people, you know, that were satisfied with their religion. Even, and it's horrible to say, racial identity. It used to be if you're a white guy, you hang out with other white guys. If you're a black guy, you hang out with other black guys. You kind of don't trust any of the other ones. Thankfully, we've gotten away from that. But now, since you can't just go around and go, man, I hate black guys, you got to walk around and go, well, I fucking hate Republicans. It's like you need a group to hate. You need a tribe. And I want to say it's probably better than racism, but it is the equivalent of racism. I mean, we're basically just looking for an excuse to be, we want a group it's okay to be racist towards. And we've decided it's okay to be racist towards the other political party. And it's sick. It's sick what we're doing. We should stop. We got to knock it off.
There is a need, like almost like a psychological need to shit on other people, you know, just like, you know, like it's almost like ingrained in us, like from an evolutionary standpoint, like because we've been doing it so long. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's nature involved in that. Like it's just this part of our nature. Obviously some of it is probably nurtured too, but yeah, like we just need somebody to attack. And like growing up, like I play music, like I have drum set. I don't know if you can see that behind me, but like it was tribalism among different like genres, like of different bands. Like, you know, it's like, you know, so I was like in like a pop punk band. So it's like, we, you know, and we kind of didn't get along with some of like the heavier metal bands. Like they kind of thought we were like, or the emo bands. They thought we were kind of a joke because like we're so positive in our sound versus them. They were very like, you know, angsty and like, you know, sad. And so it's like, you know, like we'd be kind of at odds with each other, you know, naturally we'll fall into these situations of where we see somebody else like kind of as our competitor or something where we have to sort of like shit on them or like yeah, like be at odds with somebody. It is, I think it's a psychological thing, almost like a
Right.
competitive
And it would
thing.
be good if we could take that and go, okay, we're naturally competitive animals. We've learned to compete for resources and hate the other tribes because we want access to the best berries and the freshest spring water. Fine. Why don't we just channel that into something fun, like sports?
Yeah,
Okay. Like I hate you because you're a Red Sox guy. You hate me because I'm a Yankees guy. And then we can have like this little proxy fight. But the
yeah,
problem is we're not doing that. We're like actually trying to find the evil ones among us who can
yeah.
string them up by their heels and murder them. And it's not productive and it's not healthy. I get in a lot of trouble because I'm a very empathetic person. I go, even criminals and murderers and whatever else. I go, well, you can't, you got to treat them, even the worst people in the world. You got to kind of try and find the humanity in them and hopefully guide them back to the light. You get a lot of these guys who are like racists and psychopaths. And you go, well, I think yelling at them isn't helping them. I think it just makes them
Right.
more angry. Is there maybe a better approach that's going to help them find some understanding? And you get a lot of flack for that. People go, how could you possibly empathize with these monsters? And you go, because I don't know, man. I've done some monstrous things in my life. I've done horrible things. In the 5th grade, I peed in a kid's sled and I didn't tell him. And then he sat in the sled and he slid all the way down the hill in a piss covered sled. How fucked up is that?
Yeah.
Still feel bad about that.
Yeah.
Okay. We're all capable of unique evils. And it would be great if we could accept, okay, well, we know this about ourselves. Let's stop pretending that any one of us is any more or less monstrous than the other one. Some of us are just ones who clearly took it too far or had something go wrong in our lives. And I'm not saying you got to hug your local serial killer, but a little bit of empathy goes a long way.
Yeah, man, and like that's something a lot of people miss. It's like, it's like that's sort of like the test, right? It's like, you know, you can, go to a very dark place. We're all capable of going to very dark places. Every human is capable of doing committing atrocities, right? And you
Yeah.
can find any reason to do that. You can always find some irredeemable person out there that, oh no, we can't say no. But like at the end of the day, the sort of the test of humanity is we have to try to save everybody, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like that's the ideal, right?
As annoying as that might seem. Yeah.
That's the ideal. And, I'm not always the best at striving towards it. There's times where I get angry at people, get angry at, my perceived enemies, and I wish they did not exist, or whatever, people
Right.
that have wrong,
Yeah.
it's like you get there, but like it's at the end of the day, I feel like, a positive approach to life and things like that. And it's interesting too, because like, when it comes to like, it's, the whole abortion debate gets very interesting when you start talking about that, because it's like I understand. I'm not like, I am definitely more on the pro-choice side of things, but like I try to make an attempt to understand like the whole value of life. It's like, yeah, we don't want it to be like, all right, well, it's inconvenient, let's kill the baby. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we shouldn't probably view things like that, right? Like we should probably stress the value of like, well, there's something important there. Like you should really think about the value of that life. But at the end of the day, like I think that's the test, for everyone's humanity is like, well, how like, and empathy is like, yeah, I mean, how much are you willing to help people? I don't know, like I've heard some stuff though about like psychologically, some people just are like so fucked, like if they get behind like at a certain age, like young, like
Yeah.
developmental stages, that it's almost like it's hard to come back from that,
Well,
like
I think part of what we have to accept as a society is like, yeah, you're gonna have dumb people and are slower and can't contribute as much. But I mean, really, what do you need to give a guy in life? Like everybody's always so concerned about, oh, he's not putting enough into the system. See, okay, but can we just give him a box to live in and like some bread and cheese? I mean, how much does that really cost you? Anybody who gets upset about welfare, I'm like, what do you care? And they're like, well, they should be flipping a burger. I'm like, oh, what's the last time you went to the burger place and you couldn't get a burger? Like, are we at a shortage for burger flippers? Like, let them live their lives out, and it's going to be a shitty, not great life. But you can't be getting upset because they're not, twisting their arm a couple times an hour. It doesn't benefit you in any major way. And that's kind of where I get to is I'm like, we just need to get to a point of society where we go, listen, some of you guys are lazy and shitty, and it doesn't really. We have enough resources. We have invented machines that have increased the productivity rate of the human being 100-fold based on, the same point in history 100 years ago. So I don't think we're at a lack for burger flippers, really.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm crazy. I'm okay if some welfare queen wants to sit around. And again, I think, taking care of your shitty kids, that's a job. I hate to say it. As long as she's making sure those kids are fed, not hopefully running around the neighborhood shooting each other, like that's more than that's all I want from you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing your part as an American.
It's really incredible how like people have managed to sort of get the people focused as like, well, that's such a strain on the system. I'm like, what's really a strain on the system is just the fucking wasteful spending of like the politicians do with like all the breaks and shit that they give to their friends.
Right.
Like, it's like all that. It's not the welfare. Like, I don't like that people would be gaming the system, but at the same time, it's like that's not. I don't blame them.
It should not be your top concern. And if you're worried about economics, you should be worried about dropping $14 billion on a supersonic jet that it's like, what are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
Bomb China? Like, we can just bomb China now. We don't need the jet. I'm more worried about shit like that.
Exactly.
I'm not losing sleep because some welfare queen mom, whatever the fuck is, I don't know, not helping out the system enough. I don't care. It's not that big a deal to me.
Corruption, lobbying, the fucking insider trading, like all of that, I feel like is way more important than the fucking people straining the welfare system. Like,
well, also we have this crazy idea where it's like, well, the most important thing in life is hard work. And I'm like, it does not take any amount of work to take your $1 million, inherit money from your father, go to a stockbroker and go, can you just invest this in an index fund? I'll live off it for the rest of my life. Like, there's a lot of guys who are doing literally zero work and reaping all the rewards of capitalism. So if you're worried about some mom who, again, doesn't want to flip a burger or work a Walmart checkout line, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. No, exactly, man. Like, and I think that's kind of like what we see, to kind of bring a point to the conversation. It's like with the Netflix protests, it's like these things are all like people are so focused on sort of the wrong targets. They're being directed by very bad actors to focus like on creative people, on welfare moms. Like, no, it's like focus on the people in power that are sort of fucking manipulating you and leading you by the nose on this stuff. Like, it's like people that marginalize peoples and stuff. It's like, I empathize with that. But the thing is activists in particular, career activists, do not have people that they're representing's best intentions in mind, because if they solve the problems for the community, they don't have a job anymore. So these people go out and stir up shit and act like assholes. And when people are like, hey, that person's a fucking asshole, they point to the society, see how oppressed I am. Everyone thinks I'm it's like, no, you're being a jerk.
We live in a society, as they say.
Certainly.
We live in a hell of a society.
Yeah, man. But it's been fun talking to you and shooting this shit, honestly.
I appreciate it.
And I appreciate your time, man. Hell,
I'm happy to come on by. Listen, there's a lot going on in the world, but all I can say is I hope that people will consider supporting people in your community who you think are doing good work and can keep bringing you entertainment, man. Anybody, if you follow a YouTuber and you watch every one of their videos, give them $1. Put $1 in the bucket every month and let them help creating that stuff. It really goes a long way. Podcast or anybody.
Do you want to shout out any of your stuff? Any plugs before you?
Well, you can always check out youtube.com/Vito. And I also have a new channel, Vito 2, which you can find on YouTube. And, of course, my podcast, The Biggest Problem in the Universe. You can find that at biggestproblem.show.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Give me 5 stars on iTunes if you feel like it. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at historichole. You can also email me at historichole@gmail.com. My name is David, and I'm out of here.